What if I told you that the thing you fear most is actually the secret weapon of every successful person on the planet? That's right, I'm talking about failure. While you've been running from it your whole life, billionaires, world champions, and breakthrough innovators have been collecting failures like Pokemon cards. Today, we're flipping the script on everything you thought you knew about failing. Think about this for a second. When you were learning to walk, you fell down hundreds of times. Did you give up? Did your parents panic and decide you'd never walk again? Of course not. You got back up, stumbled some more, and eventually mastered something so complex that robots are still struggling with it today. So why did we suddenly decide that falling down was shameful once we grew up? Here's what nobody tells you about failure. It's the only teacher that gives you real-time feedback about reality. Success can actually be a terrible teacher because it doesn't always show you what you did right. You might succeed despite making mistakes, or because of lucky timing, or factors completely outside your control. But failure is brutally honest. It points directly at what needs fixing. Let me share something that'll blow your mind. James Dyson created over 5,000 prototypes before his revolutionary vacuum cleaner worked. 5,000 failures. Most people would have quit after prototype number 10, maybe 20 if they're really determined. But Dyson understood something crucial. Each failure wasn't a step backward, it was data. Each broken prototype taught him something new about airflow, suction, or design that he couldn't have learned any other way. The difference between people who break through and people who break down isn't talent, luck, or even hard work. It's their relationship with failure. Winners have learned to extract lessons from setbacks faster than others give up. They've developed what psychologists call a growth mindset, where challenges become puzzles to solve rather than evidence of inadequacy. But here's where it gets really interesting. Failure doesn't just teach you technical skills or problem solving. It builds something far more valuable: emotional resilience. Every time you fail and choose to continue, you're literally rewiring your brain. You're proving to yourself that setbacks aren't permanent, that you're capable of handling difficulty, and that your identity isn't tied to any single outcome. Think about the most successful people you admire. Oprah was fired from her first television job for being too emotionally invested in her stories. Steven Spielberg was rejected from film school 3 times. Walt Disney was told he lacked imagination and had no good ideas. What separated them wasn't an absence of failure, but their ability to reframe failure as feedback. Now, let's talk about the failure paradox that changes everything. The more you're willing to fail, the less you actually will. When you stop being afraid of failure, you take bigger risks, try new approaches, and push boundaries. This leads to faster learning and ultimately better results. Fear of failure creates the very outcomes you're trying to avoid because it makes you play small, avoid risks, and stick to what's comfortable but limiting. Here's a practical framework for turning failure into your secret weapon. First, separate your identity from your outcomes. You are not your failures any more than you are your successes. You're the person learning from both. Second, develop what I call the failure debrief habit. After every setback, ask 3 questions. What specifically went wrong? What can I control differently next time? What unexpected insight did this reveal? Third, start failing faster and cheaper. Instead of betting everything on one big idea, run small experiments. Test assumptions quickly and inexpensively. This way you can fail forward rapidly without devastating consequences. Silicon Valley calls this failing fast, and it's revolutionized how innovation happens. But perhaps the most powerful lesson failure teaches is humility and empathy. When you've experienced significant setbacks, you develop compassion for others struggling with their own challenges. You become a better leader, friend, and human being because you understand that everyone is fighting battles and facing obstacles. The greatest irony is that our education system and society have conditioned us to fear the very thing that accelerates learning. In school, mistakes are penalized with bad grades. In many workplaces, errors are career-limiting moves. But in reality, the people making the biggest impact are those comfortable with uncertainty. Willing to experiment and resilient enough to bounce back from setbacks, Consider this radical idea. What if you started seeking out controlled failures? What if you deliberately put yourself in situations where you might not succeed, but where the learning would be invaluable? This doesn't mean being reckless, but rather being strategic about taking calculated risks in service of growth. The most successful entrepreneurs, artists, and innovators have learned to love the process of failing intelligently. They understand that breakthrough moments often come disguised as breakdowns. They've learned to see failure not as the opposite of success, but as a crucial ingredient in creating it. So here's your challenge. Identify one area where fear of failure has kept you playing small. Take one calculated risk this week. Embrace the possibility of not succeeding perfectly. And watch how this single shift transforms not just your results, but your entire relationship with growth and possibility. Remember, failure isn't your enemy. It's your most honest teacher, your resilience trainer, and quite possibly your greatest competitive advantage. The question isn't whether you'll fail, but whether you'll learn.